Welcome to IT Visionaries, created by The Mission, your #1 source for accelerated learning.
On this episode of IT Visionaries, Ian sits down with Jonathan Reichental, Chief Information Officer with the City of Palo Alto. In this conversation, Jonathan shares with Ian his thoughts on blockchain enterprises, the current evolution of IT organizations, and why programming is the discipline we need in the 21st century. Enjoy.
IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. The Lightning Platform is a leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. With Salesforce, now everyone is empowered to build apps for their organization. Learn more at salesforce.com/buildapps.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. Today we have in studio in Palo Alto, which is very interesting because it's the CIO of Palo Alto. Jonathan, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm so glad to be here in this beautiful studio you guys have built.
Thanks, I appreciate it. We have some really exciting stuff to talk about today. Jonathan is a technology leader with over 30 years in IT and was named one of the top 100 CIOs in the world. And he has a ton of insights both on the private sector and now in the public sector with the City of Palo Alto. Let's get into it with, where did you get your start in IT?
Yeah. Well, I'm an IT guy the whole way. I got to say, and I've probably said this many times, my brother loves to hear it, is he influenced me the most. You know, I'm a kid. He's my older brother. He brings home a VIC-20, a Commodore VIC-20. Do you remember that? Is that before your time? Okay. Commodore was a big deal in the personal computer space before the PC was something, right? And we're talking here probably early 80s, actually. And yeah, I watched him programming. I watched him playing games and programming. Of course, I played the games, but I picked it up. I wish I'd really got deep into the programming side because, you know, I often regret that I'm not a great developer today. I can do some code, but, you know, beyond reading and mathematics and the core things, programming now seems to be another discipline that we probably all need in the 21st century. So, you know, I was hooked from a very young age, and I wrote a small software program which somebody purchased. And by the way, I'll tell you right now, it was $150 I got from it, the equivalent of $150. Nothing like the millions kids get today for spinning up games, you know, and having big IT companies here in Silicon Valley purchase them. But $150 back in the early 80s for a guy like me was game changing. So I guess I was in. And whilst I've done a lot of neat things in my life, you know, been very active in the music industry, teaching and all sorts of other things, technology leadership has been the sort of there's been a very consistent thread for closing in now 30 years, although I can't believe I'm saying that. And so my start was my brother. We actually, in fact, had a small consulting company together for a few years. I was born in Ireland, so this all happened over in Dublin, Ireland. And then I emigrated. I came to the US with a suitcase and one suit and got hired by Coopers & Lybrand in a technology role. We merged with Pricewaterhouse, became PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I stayed there for almost 15 years. Incredible journey and amazing business. And the last few years of my time at PwC, I was the head of technology innovation. And yeah, I had the opportunity to create this from nothing. I mean, this was not well defined, but it was a role that our US and global CIO wanted to see developed, and I had the chance to kind of invent that role, and just was a great experience to be able to not only figure out ways in which we could deploy more innovation into the organization across the US and sometimes even globally, but also help our clients, you know, think about the future and the impacts of new tech on their business models. So every 2 weeks I got paid, and I was like, whoa, I get paid for this? This is cool. You know, that I want everybody to have that experience where, you know, you do a job and then knowing that you're getting paid for it too is like the greatest, the most exciting thing, because it seems like you're getting paid for your hobby, right?
We always talk about that at the Mission. Every time we have an all hands call, it's like, man, I can't believe we get to do this. This is great. Yeah. You know, I mean, what would you rather be doing? But no, I totally agree.
Right. Well, I'll anyway, to kind of conclude here. Yeah, I mean, from PricewaterhouseCoopers over in Florida, they had their tech center in Tampa Bay. I left and came over to Silicon Valley, due to much encouragement to immerse myself here. I worked for Tim O'Reilly at O'Reilly Media, and then I got the call to work for City, which was a big surprise, and that takes me sort of to today.
Let's kind of go into just kind of some broad strokes over like what you've seen from IT changing, because I think one of the really interesting things why we're so excited to have you on the show, first and foremost, because you're a fellow podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone should check out Drinking Wine, Talking Tech, which is super popular. If you like IT Visionaries, you're going to like that. But as a purveyor of media, which is close to our heart here at the Mission, working with Tim O'Reilly and helping build O'Reilly Media is really fascinating because you got to see so many trends. And when you're at that intersection of tech and media, you see all of the stuff coming out kind of in that pre-education, it's not quite getting to the schools yet. You're kind of the intermediary between that. Like, what were the things that you saw there that were changing just so rapidly from kind of those early days where you're looking at CIOs and their responsibilities to now?
Well, I really enjoyed my time at O'Reilly Media because it was a time of great change in the media industry, and continues. By the way, it's continuing to this day, as we all know, and you know more than most. O'Reilly were very successful in producing high quality technology books, running conferences, and they even had at the time a small sort of tech school. And people were starting to buy Kindles and e-readers. I mean, it was really happening fast, and it was quite disruptive. It's a very different model to send a manuscript to a printing press and run a large printing job, then put books in boxes and ship them to bookstores. That's a very different business model than distributing digital content, and in so many different ways. And the pricing has to be different. And it's a transformation that lots of at least the book companies had underway during would have been the late 2000s into the early sort of 2010, 2011. Seems like things have potentially sort of stabilized a little bit. We're more probably inclined to watch videos now on our smartphones than we are to download a book to an e-reader in terms of mass appeal, although all of that continues to be still popular. Around about the same time, I think about what were the big tech things happening back in sort of 2008, 2009. Social media was starting to take shape. My recollection was, Twitter was becoming a thing. Google Plus was just announced around about then, I think about 2010 perhaps. And we see the end of that arc. In the last few weeks, Google Plus is over, at least on the consumer side. I mean, the story of social media is still being told. I don't know that we have any idea where it's headed, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think personally, I think pretty much the broad strokes of it is like we pretty squarely got it wrong from the perspective that businesses thought we were going to be able to use it one way, and turns out that's not at all how we can use it. And I think that is going to be the next shift from the business implications of that. Like, hey, we thought you build a Facebook page, hey, and that's your page. Turns out you have to pay for that, for access to that audience every day. And I think that, for CIOs and for IT leaders, you never thought that you were going to be involved in social media.
Yeah.
You never thought that you might not have thought that you would be involved in, content creation or a lot of these things. The movement, we were just talking to the Box CIO about this and the CIO of Unity about the same thing, like moving terabytes of information, that's something that you'd have to be able to collaborate in real time. And social media, you're seeing kind of a lot of that stuff. What does the modern CIO look at that stuff and say, like, how do I deal with this? You know?
Well, it's kind of interesting that, you said CIOs didn't think they'd have to kind of deal with this type of thing. There was a sort of, in the last 10 years, there's been a kind of a war, if you like, a battle between the chief communications officer, the chief marketing officer, and the CIO, CTO. I think it's starting to get resolved. But, I think about the organizations I've been a part of, and I was the person who typically spun up the Twitter account and the Facebook account and the LinkedIn account. And
did you really?
For the enterprise, yeah, because it was seen as technology. But then clearly the chief marketing officer said, well, hey, wait a minute, I need to own that and use that as the channels for the organization, and has real value. And, honestly, I've been okay with that, saying, hey, I'd love to have you assume oversight for this, and it makes a lot more sense. I think that's been an interesting phenomenon to be not only a part of, but to observe. And I think, here's the interesting thing about the role of the CIO in sort of 2018. We've been desperate to get on the C-suite and be part of the core leadership team of any organization. Gradually, the CIO has been invited, and now as part of that executive team. And we had to typically learn some finance stuff, marketing, some sales, product stuff, really become a business person. And so, that was, a lot of us started in tech, and that's what we're great at. And then we were like, kind of forced into understanding business too. But here's what's happened. Here's the transformation. Whilst that's what was happening over the last few years, what's happening now is when the CIO comes to the table, the CFO, the chief marketing officer, the strategist, they all have to learn tech. They all have to learn technology now. So you become, as the CIO and CTO, a critical part of that team. It's no longer like begging to be, can I be part of the club? It's more like you need to be at the table here because our business is absolutely dependent on technology. Our strategy is dependent on understanding how to better produce our products and services, how to continually evolve them, because the market is changing so fast now. So it's kind of neat, if the assumption is you're either listening to this podcast because you're interested in, being an IT leader, or you are an IT leader and you're growing. You're just about one of the most popular people within your organization, or becoming popular.
And you might not know it yet.
Yeah, you don't know it. And actually can be intimidating, because for a lot of IT leaders, they actually enjoy and have enjoyed being in the back office. I'll keep the data center running, I'll make sure services are up every day. And suddenly they're being brought to the table and being asked, what? How do we re-platform this product to be able to deliver on a global scale, overnight? And so the demands on the leadership of IT and his or her team have, increased a lot.
Yeah, one of the things that Paul Chapman, the CIO of Box, had said in a previous episode was that when he goes into meetings, he's not worried about them saying the conversation isn't anymore, or isn't at their company, hey, C-suite, I'm bringing this technology. I'd really like to implement this. And then they're saying, oh, well, how much time, whatever. The question that he's getting now is, why haven't we done this already?
All right.
And I think that that is the mindset shift of like, hey, if this is such a big deal, why haven't we been doing it?
Yeah.
And I think, back to the social media point, the blurred lines here of this type of innovation is, well, if marketing and comms, the Marcom team, however that's constructed, is the one who actually wants to write the copy and get the tweets out there, but who's tracking the results of that? Okay, well, that is that marketing and communications. How is that brought into your CRM? How is, your CRM filtering to, sales? And then how is all of that sort of stuff tracked? And whose role is each of those things? Is it the head of growth? Is it, what are the different people that are involved with all the reporting? And now you have the IT leader sitting at the intersection of every single piece of technology that the business is using, listening and being the sleuth to say, well, what problems, do you need solved, and where can I help you kind of find those, and be the kind of trusted advisor, but also saying, have you thought of this? Have you seen this? Like, I'm bringing new ideas to the table. Do you think that kind of the back office person, the ticket taker, is going away, or is that just like shifting to the 10% of your job and the rest is going to be automated?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an evolution happening in not only the role of the leader there, but in the entire IT organization. I mean, as we rapidly move services and capabilities to the cloud, to other providers, the nature of the work changes. Some organizations are rapidly reducing the footprint of their data center, which is typically where a lot of highly skilled technology people have worked in a large technology organization. I see some emerging roles just in the IT organization generally. Project management, very hot, right? Data science, very hot. Business analysis, vendor management. It's still an amazing career for a lot of people, but there's a shift happening, right? We'll need engineers and we'll need programmers, but they're probably going to sit in a different location, maybe work for a provider or work for the cloud services. Or as we've seen over the last decade, even more, software developers can be on demand, in fact, anywhere in the world. In terms of the CIO role, I do see the shift. I do see that role being much less about a leader who sort of runs an IT organization primarily, just make sure people are doing what they should do and doing it really well, to being a trusted advisor. And that means that role has to change too. We've got to become good at a lot of things. We got to understand the future more than ever. I mean, you think about a business a few decades ago, you weren't thinking about, do we need to change our products and services next year? Or are we going to lose our 50% of our market within 2 years? No, the time horizons were much, much longer. That's not the case today. I mean, you really have to be worried about your business almost in real time. Like, are we still relevant? Will we be relevant next year and the year after? And where's that advice and insight going to come from? So the CIO, I think, can bring a lot to the table because a lot of the change is being driven by evolution in technology. And so you ask yourself, who in an organization today is going to be the expert on artificial intelligence? Who is the person? Now, if you're big enough and wealthy enough, you might hire a chief AI officer. I don't know. I just made that up, but maybe you know some examples. But otherwise, it's going to be the CIO, CTO for a while. And then we have to figure out who else needs to begin to understand more deeply these trends. I mean, the CEO has the ultimate responsibility to be helping create that vision for what we can become in the context of change.
But I mean, is the CEO's job, if you're making tires, if your company makes tires, and the CEO's job is to set the vision and the course for the company for the next 20 years, are they going to be an expert at AI? You gotta look in the mirror and be like, wait, who else on this table? Who else on this table? And the answer is, if somebody else is going to be the expert, like, that's probably not a good thing for you. Like, you probably got to do it. So how do IT leaders learn? Like, obviously, you have worked in that kind of world with O'Reilly, but also, you've created several, super successful online courses with LinkedIn Learning and co-authored, books about the Apps Challenge playbook. You've talked about this a lot. You've thought about it a lot. How should IT leaders learn? And what are the ways that, what are the things that you're doing? What are the things that kind of keep you fresh and keep you cutting edge to stay up with these type of trends?
Yeah, no, I love that question. I get it asked quite a lot, actually. So thank you for asking it again. So, and of course, the way I'm doing it is changing, as it should, in light of everything else that continues to evolve as we head into the future. Personally, I've got an incredible appetite for knowledge. I mean, that's a characteristic of who I am. So there's the two sides are, I love to consume knowledge, but I also love to share knowledge. And you cited many of the things that I do, whether it's my own podcast or a lot of the writing I do, the content I develop for videos and LinkedIn Learning, do a lot of keynotes, a lot of conference work, a lot of that type of thing, because it's a gift and it's a privilege to be able to share. At times I can even sort of create my own view of the future and share that too. That's a unique privilege, right? I don't know that there's an area that I don't consume. So I love online videos, love YouTube, of course. I think that's a remarkable platform. And I'm a big user of Twitter, actually. There's lots of camps on Twitter. People hate it, people don't understand it. That's fine. I actually love it. I love it from the ability to consume lots of interesting information from lots of different people and organizations.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, the whole thing about, and there might be people listening who don't like Twitter. I'm a huge fan as well. It's definitely the app I use the most on my phone.
Yeah.
If you were to go back 100 years ago and say, I could listen to, or I could get daily updates on what, whatever Churchill is thinking. We had stuff like that, and it was called a newspaper. And those things were, I don't think we ever realized how constrictive they were. There was a writer that was being syndicated in a third of households in America, right? It's that's what we have with Twitter. Now, the downside of that is obviously, Twitter is insane and there's tons of crazy stuff and trolls and all that other stuff. But, the fact that you can choose a group of mentors and you get to consume all their stuff. You can consume their podcasts and you can follow what they think about things. And some people, like Naval Ravikants of the world that are cryptic but good and sharing insights and these tweet storms and all this sort of stuff. It's so at your fingertips and all of the information is accessible from people's minds. The crowd can kind of select things that they think are interesting and things that are whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's my end of the rant, but I'm right there with you. I think it's something that if you're not on Twitter following other people, other like insightful people, you got to do it somewhere. It doesn't have to be Twitter, but you got to do it somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the phenomena we're faced with today is the abundance of content, right? It's not that there's any sort of drought. Now, having said that, I don't know that we have an abundance of really high quality content.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? And I think that's a differentiator. I think if you guys, for example, building this incredible business here in Palo Alto, if you really super focus on great content, there's going to be an audience for that. And it's going to make a difference. There's a lot of stuff that's not so good out there, right? So as a leader, if you want to learn something, there's never been more stuff, ways to learn the basics of a product or service, the basics of a technology. But the science, the art and the science, I should say, about our work is we have to grapple with change that is unpredictable. Look, we know blockchain's a thing, right? Blockchain's out there. People are fascinated, and it's already making a difference. But does anybody know what it means 2 years from now, or maybe 5 years from now? What does it mean to the operation of a city or to the autonomous vehicle movement? That's where I think maybe there's a differentiator between those that are good leaders and those that are great and amazing leaders, is the ability to consume a vast amount of different types of content, synthesize it, and have a sense of where things might be trending. And you hope that among the things, the bets you make, most of them will be good because you know that some are going to be wrong. I mean, I have 30 years doing this, and I can list the things I got wrong, but I'm also excited about the stuff I got right. Going back to this theme we've had in our conversation today, I saw social media, I think, before a lot of folks did when I was with PwC, and people thought I was crazy. They didn't know what I was talking about when I was beginning to articulate what this could mean when you start to connect the world and have sort of a frictionless way to communicate and share content. I think that ability to consume content and make sense of the future is a 21st century skill.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's always room on the cutting edge. I mean, like, that's why we created the podcast. Like, we want to hear from the cutting edge, the people that are actually out there doing it and the hard decisions that they had to make. And your point is exactly right, is like, there are the moments in time where you see the change that you think is going to happen, and then you have to go convince people that this is the case. And those people are executives carrying, $1 billion of revenue and thousands of employees and all that sort of stuff. And you have to say, like, hey, this change is coming. We can plan for it or not. So let's get into the blockchain stuff a little bit. What do you think does the next 5 years look like of blockchain, and specifically for the enterprise? Because I think that's the thing that, we've talked about it on this podcast with Amber Balde of the things that she did at JP Morgan and the things that she's building in her startup, which is great. But from your perspective, as a city, working with a city, but also kind of just reading the tea leaves, what do you think blockchain enterprises is coming?
Well, we're moving from the hype now to the practical period of this technology. A lot of technologies kind of die at the sort of when they peak in terms of expectations. There's a lot of organizations and people who are incentivized to promote something beyond its abilities to actually meet any of those expectations. And we had a period of that for blockchain. I know in my own travels and networking that there's still a sizable amount of people who are still on the fence about this. And what I'm seeing is it's tracking towards the mainstream now, which is the very interesting stuff, where it moves from a novelty, kind of a curiosity, to, this can bring real value to our organization. Now, having said that, I think the technology is still rather in flux. I wouldn't put it in the category of mature technology yet. There's still issues with scalability. There's still a lot of different players. The market hasn't sorted itself out yet. Fundamentally, we're talking about a different way to think about a database here, right? I mean, that's at the heart of this. And all of us who have been in the tech industry for a few decades, we're wedded to, either structured or unstructured databases. We understand columns and rows and how to query databases. So we have a particular mindset. Now we're being sort of faced with this. Here's a different way to think about this. Here's a system of record that doesn't require trust anymore. It's effectively trustless. You can rely on the mechanism, the way in which the system works in order to give you the confidence that transactions are accurate and the participants are who they say they are. It has this notion of provenance that we never delete stuff, right? Again, as someone who's worked almost in every role in the technology organization, this idea that you don't update or delete records, you just add records. Again, it's very interesting, right? That's notionally different. And then you start to look at, well, what's the practicality of that? Well, first of all, you potentially begin to solve a lot of, or you reduce the issues, the risks that are aligned with traditional databases. Everything from fraud to identity issues. And those are things worth solving right there. And you also start to reduce the friction between interfaces, right? So data and transactions can move much more rapidly in a confident way across the global network. I think about, on occasion, I have to receive or send money to an international location. I have family abroad, for example.
Yep.
And of course, you can use a premium service, and there's a huge commission for that to send money, let's say, in the same day, right? But if I just want to use my bank, just use a SWIFT network to send $1,000 to somebody in Europe, we're talking a few days, and anything up to actually 10 days is my recent experience. That's not a 21st century solution. And so in a world in which we're not reliant on the traditional technology, which forces that delay, in other words, we use a distributed ledger technology to be able to do that transaction, it can almost be immediate, right? Or every 10, 15 minutes. That's game changing. If you can move money fast, and, of course, now go beyond money, you can move data and business rules across multiple networks. I think, part of your question was, where is it going to all happen? Where do I see the impact? In a city context, we're fascinated by this, right? One of the areas that I love is blockchain potentially for the very first time offers us a solution to online voting, right? Now, it's been experimented in a couple of countries. Zug in Switzerland, a city in Switzerland, is one of the areas where blockchain for online identity is being used. That's small, but the results are interesting. But I can't help thinking if in the future we can all vote on our smartphones on a number of issues and know that our vote counts and it's a low risk, highly secure way of doing it, that's kind of game changing to democracy, right? Then cities have a whole range of other repositories, everything from birth certificates to wedding certificates to real estate documents that all can be valued in an immutable database, right? Finance sector, of course, you talked about that. I loved that interview, by the way, with that lady from Chase. But go across anybody in the supply chain. Aren't most businesses in the supply chain? I sound like perhaps I think this is going to be big and it's going to happen definitely and very fast. Even baked into everything I've shared with you right now, there's a level of uncertainty. But I think it's worth, if you're listening and you're kind of on the fence, I think it's worth experimenting. I think you should identify at least one experiment in your business. Even if you're far displaced from, the financial sector, for example, try something. Try it. Just begin to learn about and try it, because I think there's enough evidence to suggest this is trending in the right direction.
When we talked to Frederick about this idea, he was saying that one of the bets that they didn't make was on blockchain. And he was like, we just weren't ready and the market wasn't ready. And then 2 years later, now we've made a bunch of bets. And it's like that sort of thing, right? The market wasn't quite there, 2 years ago where they felt comfortable. But now he's like, now we're starting to make our decisions. We have the information now. Yeah. And I think that's kind of your call to action there is like, start learning about it and figuring out where the places where there might be an experiment, and then, start to run one. Because I think everyone just looks at the money side of things, but, PII ramifications of this, especially for the city government, is so huge that like the voting aspect, you're talking about how much organizational effort do we spend in America to get people to go vote. Mm-hmm. We have campaigns, we have PSAs, we have hashtags, we have all this stuff. Everybody's spinning up. And it's like everything we do in our life can be done on a smartphone, except for voting. Yeah. Except we have fingerprint technology on our phones. We have facial recognition software. Like the technology is all there. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why we can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to, because in reality, voting is the thing that can have or absence of voting can have the biggest impact on your life, your family, your friends. It really makes a difference here now in the 21st century. Americans aren't voting. We have our, I don't know when this podcast will be played. We might be before or after the midterms.
It should be before.
If it's before, vote. If there's anything that resonates with your listeners, it's my desire for every American who is eligible to vote, no matter what your party or issues are. I'm completely not indicating any particular angle. I'm saying simply the act of voting, which is such a privilege, and it's so easy to do today. Now, it'll be easier if it's electronic, clearly, but like mailing in a vote or showing up on the voting day, I would seriously encourage everybody to do that. 100 million Americans didn't vote in 2016. 100 million people.
It's wild. But this is one of the things that it's like, this is the actual solution, or a possible solution.
Right.
The solution, what we've seen is like, let's look at our track record, and it's like, we've created too many barriers to entry to this thing. We got to remove barriers to entry so that people can vote. And like, you might say that people are whatever, but ultimately that doesn't matter. If you're running a business, it doesn't matter if your customers are tired or lazy or can't just have the means to do something. You need to figure out a way to serve them. That's what we need to do, is serve the citizens of the United States.
That's right.
And this, this is a global podcast. We have tons of, I think half of our listeners are not in the US, but so this applies to any country. But
sure.
Yeah, that's what we do in business. We remove barriers to entry. We remove friction so that we can create a frictionless experience. That's what every single CIO is trying to do. So therefore we should probably do it with the most important, like, human liberty, which is like, the ability to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit towards your responsibilities at the City of Palo Alto. What does the CIO of a city do?
It still is a surprise to me. Sometimes I'll be facilitating a workshop or a talk, and I'm a few minutes in and somebody puts up their hand and says, wait, a city has a CIO? So it still is a unusual concept for a lot of people. I have to give credit to President Obama, who appointed the first federal CIO and then had a great influence on the federal agencies, who then hired CIOs. The states hired CIOs, and that began to trickle down. It was a recognition that, just like in the private sector, where technology has moved from the periphery into the center of the action, technology was moving from the outside of government life into the center of government life. And that if we had any chance of solving these major, appear to be intractable issues in our society, we're going to have to use technology, and we're going to have to use innovative technology to do that. And you have to have a leader who's ready to champion that and sit with the executive team, like we talked about earlier, and run an innovative IT organization to deliver on those commitments. So my world is a little bit, it's divided between those day-to-day, like IT leadership things you have to do. Things have to work every day. When people come into work in the morning, stuff has to work. The City of Palo Alto, we've run a full utilities. So we have a gas, electric, water, wastewater. We even have commercial fiber internet service. And so we have over 300 computer systems. And we're a small city. So there may be a city or an organization listening saying, well, that's nothing, right? But we're just we're a small Northern California town, although an important one and an influential one in the world. We're still a small town, less than 100,000 people live here, although a lot of people come here to work every day. So we get up to about 130, 140,000 people every day. And we have a big university here, which drives a lot of traffic as well, Stanford University. So a lot of my work is to make sure it all works. If you don't do that as an IT leader, that's your bread and butter. You're not going to get credibility. You're not going to be given the opportunity to innovate and to be the trusted advisor that you want to be. I think we all want to be that. The functioning of your organization and delivery of services is primary.
It's appropriate that as you're saying that, the City of Palo Alto garbage truck just drove by, and we might need to get some of that fiber wired over to the Mission Studios here.
That's right. Yeah, just more evidence that this is real. This is all real, right? We're here in a garage in Palo Alto for sure. But of course, if all I was doing was that, I don't think we'd be living up to both the opportunities we have plus the responsibility I think we have here in the heart of Silicon Valley. So a proportion of my work, and I can't really put a percentage on it, but some decent chunk of it is trying to help our leaders, not only across the different departments we have, but also our elected leaders understand where things are trending. What does the emergence of self-driving vehicles mean to cities? This is an important question, right? They're coming. And by the way, self-driving vehicles are here in many cities. There are already a fleet of public transport vehicles which are autonomous. Many people still think this is years out, and I'm telling people, no, this is happening right now. But there's going to be a larger transition in terms of your individual ownership of a car and how you might then use on-demand autonomous vehicles in the future. That's going to have great impact on cities, on how you design a city and the things you have to support, the new technology you have to deploy. And so part of my role has to be to educate on that, to be a thought leader, to develop content and share content with all those people, plus our community. But people are interested in what we're doing here too. The world is interested in Palo Alto, and I've learned this personally now for the last few years. So I am a very visible leader, and I'm out there being a champion for quality of life, for incredible communities as we head into sort of the unpredictability of the fourth industrial revolution. So that's part of my work too. And I think a lot of CIOs in cities, and I have a lot of friends across California and in fact across the nation and the world, who are IT leaders in a city context. And gradually we're seeing them move from being that back office operator to managing that well, but also beginning to be the innovator in their organization and being a leader around the possible uses of tech.
So how do you think cities can drive innovation? Like how, and like, what does this look like? Is it hackathons? Is it reacting to what's happening from the businesses around them? Is it, just finding and outsourcing to vendors? Like, what does innovation look like for a city?
It's multidimensional, by the way. There's lots of things we can do. And so I'm reminded of the expression, a particular idea that years ago, people thought of government service like a vending machine, right? You pay a tax, which is like your dollar. You stick in the dollar and you get a $1 worth of service back. And well, that hasn't been the case in a long time, right? The overhead of delivering government services is huge now. And so you're putting in your dollar and who knows how much you're getting back in terms of services. The only way we're going to deliver state-of-the-art, game-changing change is through partnerships. And it means working with, your traditional partners, working directly with your community, working with the private sector, with academia, with other government agencies, both local, state, and federal. This applies all over the world. This is not a uniquely American thing. So we have to collaborate more than ever. IT leaders in a government context have to be collaborators. It's probably fair to say that in the private sector too. I mean, you can't be an island anymore. The best companies are partnering. The best companies are creating magical, productive partnerships so they can deliver even more and better services to their consumers. Same thing in government. So the partnership model has to be top of mind, I think, for getting stuff done. And if cities do that well, and they have, they're the center of the mechanics of a city. So we can be amazing conveners. We can be great facilitators. Often what I do as a CIO for Palo Alto is I'm connecting people. I'm connecting ideas. I don't always have to be involved. I'm like, hey, I saw this person over here with this problem, and then I saw over here this person with this solution, and I connect them. I'm saying, hey, connect, make magic, make wonderful things happen. There's that piece of it. Also, the platform of a city is incredible to innovate in. The idea that most cities have electricity going to their lamps, their light posts, means they become incredible places for experimenting with sensors, all types of sensors, because you got the electricity, right? And they're already distributed across a city context. And then you can use something like very low bandwidth or narrowband communication to send data into the cloud. So you can do everything from traffic management to sensors for air quality. And even here in the US, we're interested if there's a gunshot, and we're doing our discovery later on. Where did the gunshot come from? And you can do that with audio sensors. It's exciting if you're an innovator to be able to have the canvas of a city. So that's another thing that we can offer up. We do it in a managed way. Sometimes you want to say, hey, we'll just do it in this block. I think the last thing I would share on this important question is we have to create the economic conditions for success, right? Many cities that want to attract sort of fourth industrial revolution industry they will create an area that has tax benefits, right? Or incentives to provide people to move into developing areas of a community, so that they bring jobs to the less prosperous side of a community. So the economics are very important. Fortunately, here in Silicon Valley, we got it just about right. In fact, I think it's sometimes out of control, and we have lifestyle problems in terms of transportation and a housing crisis that is the product of our success. But maybe those are a few examples that are useful.
That's great. I mean, that's mind-blowing stuff. I think I had not thought of a street lamp as an opportunity to track gunshots before, but I think it's a salient point, because the things that end up being a burden can often, like you said, create a platform for change. What are some of those other things? Like, so we sat down with, in our upcoming podcast, Future Cities. My producer always gets mad when I plug when other shows. You got to do it. It's going to be really exciting. But we talked to the CEO of Proterra, Ryan Popple, about like electric buses, and you're like, you look at these sort of things, and you're like, it is insane that we have, as a society, but our tax dollars buy oil futures. Like, that's what we're doing. We're buying oil futures when we have a fleet of diesel buses, when electric buses can connect to the grid in a way that is cheaper and better for the environment, right? Like things like that. But I think that, technology has to catch up. So like, what are the things that we're waiting? Like, what are you waiting on right now for technology to catch up and just be like, if we could just get, like, fiber's one that's like, for me, I'm like, gosh, can we just please get there so much faster? Like, I live in Oakland and I have horrible cell phone reception and I have horrible internet, and there's no option. There's no option to get faster internet. What are some of those things that you see that you're kind of waiting on from a technology perspective?
Well, I will say this at the beginning of my answer is getting to where we want to get to is not just about technology. It is also about the ability for people to accept change at the rate in which they're comfortable. It has to be relative to culture and economics too, right? Sometimes communities can't afford to do certain things. And not because they have no money, but because they have other priorities, right? So there's a whole range of other things that I don't want to leave out of my answer. I just want to kind of start it with that. I do think connectivity is a key answer, and you kind of got there already in the question. We need just generally better connectivity. I'm not going to say where my sort of preference is, because I would just say this: it's probably some hybrid of fixed and wireless. So I'd be open-minded as to where things are trending. There's a significant momentum around the emergence of 5G, although we do have to balance the hype versus the reality. And although I can't believe it, there's already talk on 6G. So the connectivity model that we have today is going to be radically shifted here in just a few years. So that's coming. What form it takes in individual communities is going to reveal itself in time. I also think that we need to more rapidly pursue decarbonization. We are still around the world highly reliant on carbon-based energy in particular. And so there are incredible communities doing amazing things to adopt a whole range of non-carbon methods, everything from solar to wind to geothermal and beyond. So to me, that can't happen fast enough. Let's get there, because it's such a great thing. And by the way, the jobs in non-carbon energy are high-paying, high-qualified, great jobs.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I'm an advocate for great jobs for all Americans, and then clearly for communities all over the world. So, and lastly, because this could be a long list, but in the interest of our time we have together, autonomous vehicles. I think we will look back a few decades from now and say, probably our children or maybe our grandchildren will say, humans drove cars like at 70 miles per hour around each other with no barriers, or, and people could be sleepy or taking medicine or drunk. We're all so comfortable with that, although 1.4 million people die in car accidents every year.
Yeah, 94% are preventable.
Yeah. So, in a world in which autonomous vehicles drive very safely, we start to potentially resolve some congestion issues. We don't need massive parking lots, because the assumption a little bit is that self-driving cars don't need to park all the time. I think that's game-changing and allows us to think about cities differently. You could imagine a city that begins to convert some of its roads into green space. So, the street outside your house here becomes a field, maybe with a little stream going through it. We get to think differently, potentially. My conclusion, based on where we're at right now, as we approach the end of 2018, is we're underestimating the potential positives of self-driving vehicles and the extent to which they will be game changers in our cities.
The one thing that we know is that young people adopt technology at a fast rate. One of the interns we had at the mission was like, I never want to own a car. Why would I want to own? Like, it was like I was dumb. Like, why would I need a car?
Right.
And he's 17 or 18. Okay, before we get out of here, we're going to do the lightning round.
Okay.
Fast and easy questions, not unlike the Lightning platform by Salesforce. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number one, what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
I love Instagram.
Favorite time-saving tool?
Is my notepad and pen. I create to-do lists. I can't overstate the value of to-do lists.
Love it. Favorite use of AI or chatbots that you've seen recently?
Well, I don't know if that's my favorite, but I'm fascinated by it, is this type forward in Gmail. So I'm
I know, it's crazy. We've got that answer a bunch recently because it just launched and all of us are sitting here like, whoa, wait, what? Press tab, what?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me.
Favorite sports team or otherwise?
I should say the Irish soccer team.
Oh, there you go.
I really should. The national Irish soccer team. But I have to say my favorite thing is tennis. And I think Roger Federer is a classic, is a genius of tennis.
Favorite podcast or recent book that you've checked out recently?
Well, I love IT Visionaries
podcast. Appreciate it.
Also, I love Drinking Wine, Talking Tech, which is my own.
That's one of my favorites.
Well, I love, I listen to Star Talk. I love that podcast. I like Freakonomics. I can't think of the guy's name right now. He does Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, Alec Baldwin?
Alec Baldwin's podcast is incredible. I can't remember the name of it, but you can Google it. It's pretty cool. And then my favorite book, the book I keep coming back to and I keep referencing when I'm teaching, is The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. Very cool.
I've not checked that out. We'll throw that in the show notes. Favorite one-day getaway in the Bay Area?
I like Half Moon Bay.
Last question. Best advice for a first-time CIO?
I've written about that. I have a couple of pieces I've written about sort of the first 100 days of being a CIO.
Oh, we got to link that up. We'll put that in the newsletter.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And I'm trying to think of the advice I give in there. First of all, listen a lot. Sounds obvious, but don't be taking some radical action in your first few weeks. Listen to people. The stuff that's going on won't be obvious to you in the first few months of your job because people are going to be on their good behavior. Stuff will be hidden. So don't be taking big action. Keep your ears open. Form relationships. Relationships really, really matter. Grab coffee with your colleague. Have a lunch. Spend time with them. So relationship building. And then third is fix a few things. I really mean that. Like, not the big things. Don't do a major upgrade in the first 30 days or 60 days. Fix a few things that have been bothering people, because that shows, first of all, you're action-oriented. It shows that you are a doer. Not only do you take action, but you get stuff done. And you will start to build credibility because people will view you as a person who is not just can talk well or has executive presence, but you can change the game by making decisions and executing on them. But I'm really saying here, not big ones. I'm saying, so pick a series of small things that are visible and important and you can get achieved. And I think those small tips there will help you a lot in the first few months of your new career.
Awesome. That's it for Lightning Round. Thanks again to Salesforce, leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. Salesforce, building apps is everyone's business. Learn more at salesforce.com/buildapps. Thanks so much for hanging out.
I've loved it. This is awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back soon. This was great.
All the best to you. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you again to our friends at Salesforce. IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning platform by Salesforce, a leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. With Salesforce, now everyone can build apps for their organization. Learn more at salesforce.com/buildapps.